Morning, everyone. We're live. Sorry, a little bit late, but one of those mornings where I think to be honest, one of the one that one of the best proofs of God's existence is the miracle that I managed to not oversleep and miss one of these so far, which is hi Melissa. Good morning. Yeah, which is quite miraculous, really. So and just a um, uh, testament to the Lord's existence and grace. Um, Morning, Matt Parker. Well done, Melissa, for checking your live feed, pressing F5 there. I was just trying to when you're trying to do something in a hurry and like your computer's always like really, really slow and you're like, no, not now. Don't tell me now. So yeah, thanks Matt. So Matt's saying that standard Tim time. We should have told you that you're on at 8:45 each Sunday. I was quite good early on, and then like I started to slip recently because I've got complacent and settled into my groove. I've just putting something away. Back a sec. Okay. Great. Well, I'm at a slightly funny angle this week because I did a load of washing up last night, which is very satisfying. But I need to put it away because where we are right now is, I don't know if you can see that, we're on the stovetop, which we're going to need because we're going to cook something today. I'll try and cook something today on camera and not like I've discovered I'm not very good at multitasking. It's basically one of the main things that doing these videos has taught me, that I like can't, which is basically why, as people always point out, like by the end of it I've basically never made any breakfast because I really struggled to focus on like preparing food, cooking. I mean, cooking sort of stretched from what I've done really so far. Preparing food in any sense, and also talking. So, but anyway, I will play the titles, which also haven't necessarily got to the right point. So we'll see what happens with this, and then. Timothy's. There we go. That was good. Great. Well, hope everyone's doing well this morning. So today, I decided to take on the challenge of cooking a sunshine egg, which is a recipe I got. I'm just going to see if I can put this at a different angle and if that's going to work. It's a recipe I got at, I think it was in some children's cookbook we had as children, and so I can't. A couple of the details I can't quite remember, and but so we just have to. It's not like crucial, but anyway. So a sunshine egg is kind of like a fried egg crossed with a dibble dabble egg. In that it's basically like fried egg inside a piece of toast, which means that you have your like soldiers ready to. You just slice the toast up around it, and then you have your soldiers ready to go, which is really quite clever. So, this is like Breakfast at Timothy's properly becoming a cooking show. So, I've got, now the problem I have is that okay, actually I'll show you something that's quite cool. So, during lockdown I started, once I returned from Chateau Morris and was like, fending for myself, I basically got into the routine of buying some like fancy bread once a week. So what, like the fresh, like the taste of different stuff in the like the wooden shelves at Sainsbury's. And so one of my absolute favourite things is like olive bread with Kalamata olives. I don't really know what Kalamata olives are, but they're like the purpley ones that are like you get in olive bread that are really tasty. So so I have this olive bread, but as you can see, its profile is kind of humpish, and for a sunshine egg, you need to be able to take out a hole in the middle, so it's not really going to work. So as much as I do love olive bread, and I might cut myself a cheeky slice while I'm cooking, we can't use that. So I had to resort to the emergency sliced bread that I keep in the freezer. Now this is also like a small loaf, so it's quite teeny tiny. But you're going to have to imagine that you have like a large piece of bread, like a normal piece of bread. You probably can't tell that this is a small loaf because it's the same shape and you can't necessarily get the scale on the camera. But if I hold it next to my face, you can see like a normal piece of bread would be more like so it's a teeny tiny piece of bread, but we will make it work. So it's still actually slightly frozen, so we're going to bung that in the microwave and for some short amount of time. Oh, I should say this is a good opportunity to talk about microwaves actually, which is something I've been wanting to do for a few weeks, partly because the microwave, despite many things at Chateau Maurice being superior, one of the things that is not superior is the microwave, and I'll explain to you why, dear watchers. I don't know if you have opinions about microwaves, but I hope after this I will show you why it's worthwhile to consider your microwave carefully. So this is my microwave, and there's two key things I think you need in a microwave, and I forget what they are now. So number one is a digital display and timer. And to be honest, that may not sound like a radical point, but if you have ever lived in a student house or have like a cheap microwave, get back to me. You might have experienced microwaves where it's just got some like dial that you turn, and you can't even see what time set. It's probably got markings around the side, but you're like, this means nothing to me. And part of the point of microwave is it can be quite precise cooking. Like there's a difference between like if you I don't know if you do this in your household, but in our household we would sometimes like uke the butter. Basically, if you take the butter out of the fridge, and you've not done it like half an hour in advance of your meal or something, or like 15 minutes in advance of your meal, it's going to be really cold, and you can't really like slice it or whatever to spread it. And so if you just bung it in the microwave for like 10 seconds, just don't do it for 30 because it then melts and it's really awkward. But like for 10 seconds, you then get nicely softened butter. Now the trouble is, if you can't specifically set your microwave for 10 seconds, which I can do here, then you kind of have a problem. And so the trouble with the dial microwaves is that they're just not precise, and you can then like set a timer alongside, which is fine if you do it for like a couple of minutes or something, it's worth it. But for like 10 seconds, you're just like, no, who wants to do that? So, and I appreciate sometimes you just have to buy a cheap microwave because that's where you're at in life. But if you can have any influence over the process, I would strongly suggest you get a microwave with a digital display where you can set the time in precise increments. Now this actually lets you set it in like 10 seconds. Some will let you do like have like buttons to do like normally like 1 and 10 seconds. No, is it 1 and 10 seconds and then like 1 minute and 10 minutes? So you could do like quite fine-grained settings. This one does like has a dial, but it sets it precisely, and then it goes up in reasonable increments, and then it goes up 10 seconds at a time, and eventually it goes up by 30 at a time, and then like a minute at a time when you get to. So yeah, you've got quite a lot of flexibility. So that's my first point about. That's the first thing. The second thing, and you will know this. You might not have thought about this before, but this will now haunt you for the rest of your lives, I promise. If you go on holiday or something and get lumbered with a slightly naff microwave, you will realise this. So some microwaves, and I hope and pray that this is not ones that you have, dear watcher, because it's so tortuous. Some microwave designers, in their infinite wisdom, as in not, decided that most people would really appreciate that extra step of having to set the power they want every time, despite the fact that when you use a microwave, basically 90% of the time, in my experience at least, you just want full power. Like, you don't want to be like fiddling around with like, oh, I only want it on 60%. Oh. Although I say that, and that's what I'm about to do for this because I need to defrost it and I don't want to like completely blitz it. But yeah, most of the time you're just like, yeah, like, you know, whack a bit of heat into this, full power, fine, whatever. I'm not even asking that question. And some microwave designers, for some unknown reason, and it really baffles me. Like, I can't think how they must do like user testing, and I just can't think how they don't realise that this is just really annoying. But basically, we have to press power every single time and like select a power level. And so the microwave at Chateau Morris has like different power settings, like high, medium, low, defrost or something. So they've got a button, so you don't have to like scroll through options. You can just press one of the buttons, which is like the least worst way of doing it. But yeah, it's like, why would you make me do this? Why not just have it default to full power without, if I don't say anything, and then like, yeah, if I want a different power setting, I can like set the different power setting. That's fine. And like, I don't know why you just wouldn't build in a default like that. So that's the second thing. And thankfully, you can see we do have you can't see. We have a power setting here, but if we, it's not going to stop us from like starting the microwave if we don't set a power setting, because it defaults to full power like it sensibly should. However, in this situation, we're defrosting a tiny slice of loaf, so we probably want something. The trouble with the defrost setting on this, and this is the downside of it, is it expects you to put in like a weight in grams of the thing you're defrosting, which allows, like, on the one hand, it's helpful, but also I always find you have to do like a bit extra, or it does a bit too much. So I tend to do it sometimes, at least, on the power setting like that. So maybe this microwave isn't as good as I'm making out. And we probably want it for like 20 seconds. So there we go. Talk about a microwave for 2 minutes, use it for 20 seconds. It's the way we roll on breakfast activities. And it's like 20 past and what I can start. That's so funny. Right, so we need a pan. Should I do, no, I'll get this one. So we've got a pan. And your bread process on its own at this rate. Yeah, you're right, Melissa. Well, so okay, this is now nice and the issue with defrosting bread is that it's now kind of like, it's very moist. But we'll try and let it steam. I'll stand it up to just let it steam a bit. I should have done this in advance, but we all know that was a hopelessly optimistic kind of view of my ability to get up in time at this early in the morning on a weekend. So we've got the bread, right, and now I need some. I've made a cup of tea, so I'm just gonna get some milk. Oh, I need butter. That's what I need. Now this works best with butter, but and I've got lactose-free butter, which is very nice. But you know, you can use like spread, like Flora, or other brands are available if you don't have butter, or if you like, you know, try and not max out on those saturated fats. So there's some interesting science behind that, but we won't go there now. It's not a dieting show. Okay, so you've got your bread, and I need to try and work out a way of filming. No, is that going to work? We need like a what is that? Okay, right. So it is. Okay, this is good. Right. Now I'm going to get a plate. Save or shit. So, now the thing that I always remember about this, which is slightly funny, but you know, it makes sense, is by the way, if you're just tuning in, we're making sunshine toast, which is why you can't see me and you can see a piece of bread on the plate. So you need to make a hole in your bread, and I remember the recipe book specifically saying using a glass. Now we can see that we're pushing it a bit with this slice of bread, but it will be okay. So we line it up, make sure you don't cut over the edges. And then you like, I'm sure there's other things. I suppose if you've got like a round cookie cutter or something, you could use that, which I don't think I do, or maybe it's in a box somewhere. And maybe this plate's not entirely flat. It's not cutting very well. There we go. Okay, so we've got this, and we don't throw this away because it's useful. And then we need to get our butter, and we need to spread. I hope you're following along at home, by the way, because I should have told you. I should really post something the night before to say, like, you know, get these ingredients ready, but I'm still undecided. I think now this is the point where I'm not quite sure. I think this is right. I think you put the butter on. Yeah, that seems about right. Now, obviously, if you had a proper slice of bread, you would have more space for butter, and you wouldn't be having to be so careful that you don't rip through the sides. We won't butter that. Okay, so we've got a buttered. We've got a buttered piece of bread with a hole in. Okay, and then now we need our pan, and our cooker makes these quite nice noises when you use it. I do need to butter it on both sides. I think you might have to butter it on both sides. I'm not sure. So basically, the idea is that you kind of end up with a. No, I'm questioning my decisions. The thing I'm not sure about is whether you're supposed to toast this piece of bread or like toast it on one side and then butter on the other one. But I'm gonna roll with it. We'll experiment. Put butter on bread to toast it. Yeah, so Melissa makes a valid point that well, let me put some light on. Okay. You don't normally butter bread before you toast it, but we're not toasting it, so that's all right. Something else I was going to share with you. I bought some interesting juice. Last week we had orange juice with bits in, and this is Zingy and Bright Ruby breakfast juice with bits in. So I'm not quite sure. It looks like it's got orange and pink grapefruit and maybe grapefruit as well. So it's a kind of mixture of citrus fruits, and I like Ruby feels like a really nice. It feels quite decadent, and I quite like that. And what I really like is how like lovely and red and pink it is when you pour it out. Oh no, wait, except it's not. It's just like looks like orange juice, which I have to confess was slightly disappointing when I got it home and like opened it. But it's quite tasty, so I'm just shaking it to get some bits out. So there you go. Some Ruby breakfast juice. I think it is slightly like not quite as perky and orange as like normal orange juice is. So try getting the light. It's a bit kind of like a bit grayer. It's the best I could describe it. But oh hi, Skylar's joined us. Hello Skylar. He's saying that bread with a hole doesn't look appetizing. I feel like I would like to point out that a lot of food doesn't look appetizing until it's finished, and then even sometimes then it doesn't look appetizing, but it does taste good. Right, so we've been heating up our pan. Melissa points out I could add some Ribena to make my juice more ruby. I just feel like, do you think maybe I could get away, like if I wrote to Sainsbury's or complained to Trading Standards, that they would just like refund me or like give me a lifetime supply of Ruby breakfast juice? I could try it. What other people say? I like to toast bread, then let it cool a bit and slather it in butter so that it doesn't soak in and it becomes butter with a bit of toast. Excuse me. Well, I'm torn on that. I quite like melt. Well, yeah, I'm torn. I like melty butter in toast, but I also appreciate the sense of be able to still have like butter that's butter. So anyway, okay, so we've got our piece of our pan, and we've got our piece of buttered toast. Now we're gonna fry it. This is the bit I'm now really questioning myself on. Basically, we want to kind of like toast it, but it'd be like fried bread, I guess, with butter on one side. So we're trying to like cook it. Now I just realised the cupboard where the eggs are is behind my laptop, so I'm just gonna have to do that to I had something else I was going to talk about this week as well. What was it? That was on my bit of paper that I've lost. No, it was microwaves. We talked about microwaves. There we go. So if you're just tuning in and you missed the microwave bit, I do encourage you to go back and listen to it after the recording's done, because I think it's quite important that we are conscious of these things in our lives. Just have some tea. Okay, so Now I'm kind of, maybe I should have put some oil in the pan. Let's see what it's doing. Oh, that's not too bad. Okay, that'll do. Right, okay, now, I think this happened more quickly than I realised. Now again, I can't remember, maybe I should just put some butter in the middle of there. I'm going to use my finger. Okay, so we've got some butter there. And I may have this too hot, I'm not sure. And then we crack our egg into the middle of the hole. It's quite simple really. And I feel like it's too simple, like I've missed our eggshell over. Like I've missed something. But I think that is just it really. So egg in the middle. Now I did use quite a small glass, so it's kind of, and it's a large egg, so it's slightly gone up on the sides of the toast, but that's alright. And I hope you can see the principle of this taking shape now. Is it's like a fried egg in a little toasty hole. So I'm quite impressed really. We're like 20 minutes in, but I've like actually made some breakfast for once. Skylar's saying butter screams. Oh, so, yeah, I've forgotten the coffee. So Melissa's saying no coffee this week? Question mark. Like you should just like a note for future. Just remind me about coffee because plunging the coffee has become like the signature end of the show, and so I mean it's really awkward because we always take ages anyway, and by we I mean me. But it's even more awkward if we get to what should be the end, and then realise I have to waffle for another 8 minutes while the kettle boils and then make coffee. So the kettle's on. Oh, we've got like a bit of a leakage. I don't know if you can see that. That's run over the top from because, like I said, the egg was a bit too big. It's kind of splurged onto the side of the pan. So yeah, I think this is looking quite good though. I'm quite pleased with it. Now the last thing is we have to do the top, and now for a fried egg, there's that like trick where if you've got like a load of oil going on, I'm just gonna put this back so you can watch it cook because I feel like it's probably quite therapeutic. With a fried egg, you've got, I don't know if you know about this trick. You can I maybe I should do this on a future occasion. You get a teaspoon, although if it's a non-stick pan, you should be really careful using metal. But anyway, some sort of spoon to like scoop oil over on top of your fried egg, so then the heat of the oil like cooks on top of the egg. So what we have here is there's not really much oil going on because we use butter, and it's also quite high up. We don't want to like just cover the bread in oil. So the way to go is to put it in the grill. So it's a bit of an adventure really. Out of the frying pan into the grill, as the famous Lord of the Rings. It's the Hobbit, isn't it? So yeah, Melissa's asked you don't flip it because well, unless you're like a person who likes your egg kind of cooked like that on top. I think it's always a bit weird. You basically you run the high risk and much bit of like cooking the yolk and then it's not ready, which is a shame because then you can't dibble dabble, which you're there. It's like part of the fun. So we're going to put it in the grill instead. I don't know if you can see the grill just here, and see our laundry drying, which it's always nice. Now I'm just going to whack this under like that and try not to forget about it. We'll just get the coffee. And I finished off, as if you remember last week, I had Atkinson's prototype, which was really, really nice. I really, really enjoyed that. Oh, I need to turn the hob off as well, otherwise that's going to burn my face. I sadly finished the prototype Atkinson's roast yesterday, so we're now on to some Taylors of Harrogate. And I might have said this before, but I don't know if you know, Taylors, who make the coffee and like other stuff, other fancy tea, also are the people behind Yorkshire tea, which I didn't know, but that's what I am drinking ici, as they say in France, here. So, fun fact for you. I may have also said this before, I met some people on the train once who were from Kenya, and it was November as well, so they were quite cold. They had like they had some Yorkshire tea like red jackets and these incredible like bobble hat. It was like a woolly hat, but there were all these kind of like woolly bobbly strands on top. That was Yorkshire tea branded. Now this is the point where I forget about the eggs. I'm talking too much. Oh, that's pretty good. Right, I'll turn this off. So we've now actually. I don't know if you can see that. Let me just. Probably the first bit of like complete successful and in good time breakfast making on Breakfast at Timothy's. So we've got a sunshine egg. So I'm just going to put that on my. Oh, it's stuck. This is where it all goes horribly wrong. Let me just push that back up there. Okay. Now hopefully. Yeah, that's fine. So yeah, I don't think there's much more to say really. It's always starting to cook a little bit on top, but you can see it's nice and evenly done. So that's great. Plate it up. Now the thing I've forgotten with this little thing, the nice thing to do with this is to toast it and then butter it. So I'll do that later once I've finished the camera. So okay, what was I saying? Yeah, met these people on a train who were from Kenya, and they had these Yorkshire tea bobble hats and jackets on, which I was slightly jealous of. Now his cafetiere is here. Oh, actually, should we do like a bigger? No, I won't. Not this week. So yeah, they just been to visit Yorkshire Tea in Harrogate, which is where they're based, or Taylors in Harrogate, Taylors of Harrogate, they grow Yorkshire tea for. So the Kenyan people were tea growers for Taylors, their Yorkshire tea, and but they also do that part time, and part time they like grow other like fruit trees mainly as carbon capture offsetting, which is like very interesting. So I think they were on their way from having been at Taylor's visiting them, and they were on their way to like a climate conference or something, which is quite cool. So yeah, there's I was impressed. There's quite a complicated system around carbon credits and Sky suggested I just shove this bit in my mouth. It's actually, you probably want it. It's now slightly cold. It's also quite limp and very slightly damp from having been defrosted. So it will improve like by a factor of at least 10 by being toasted and buttered. So I'll resist the temptation. If I shoved it in my mouth, I also would be able to speak. So which is a quite crucial part of this whole thing. So yeah, these there's like quite a big companies who like have a conscience, could like buy carbon credits, which is basically offsetting the carbon that they produce by whatever businessy stuff they do, and but there's a whole system of kind of verify. It's not just like, oh yeah, we'll pay someone to plant this tree, and then yeah, that's your credits done. Like there's a whole system of like verification to making sure that so they only even if you grow a tree, like if it dies, then obviously it's not done the job of capturing carbon because it's died. So they like monitor the trees and like have to like fill in stuff to like a form on a website or something. So it's the growers to verify that this tree exists. Here it is. Here's a photo of it. Here's like a geolocation. Like and I think it's done over 30 years. So and that's the kind of the length of the scheme, and then you just get to keep the tree or whatever, and I think they get to keep the fruit from the tree. So it's like quite a good. I'm sure there are like complications and issues around it, but it seemed like quite a good system that people who are in countries most affected by climate change get to have this source of income and revenue from people doing something about climate change, and they get to keep the fruit, and it's a source of livelihood for them. So I thought it was quite quite good overall. Anyway, they'd been had all this free stuff foisted on them, and one of the guys who was there gave me a bag. Actually, it looked like this. It's not this one because I think I've eaten it since. But gave me a bag of Yorkshire tea. Actually, it might have been this. I don't think so. gave me a bag. He was just like, I've got this silver suitcase. And there's one guy who was from America who worked for this charity that like worked with them and ran stuff. And he was like, I've got to fly home, like I can't fit this in my suitcase. So he like gave me this Yorkshire tea. Anyway, that's my fun story about tailors. Right, so and this week I think the problem I have is I don't have a copy of the Jesus Storybook Bible, so I'm never quite sure where we're at. But someone posted something yesterday about an activity with the 10 plagues, so I think we must be in the Moses story. So that's what I was going to talk about this week. And I was going to talk about one of my favourite things, which is perhaps shouldn't be my favourite things about the Moses story, but like it's just a really funny bit of the Bible. I remember I went to a whole series of talks at a conference once about Exodus, and the guy who was like this Exodus scholar, but was also quite a good communicator. He wasn't just like a kind of fusty, is that a term? Fusty? Fuddy-duddy? Dusty? Crusty? Anyway, it wasn't like any other bad thing to associate with someone as like a lecturer or anything. He was like quite funny himself actually, and very engaging. So, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, so he made the point that the book is quite funny. Like it starts off with this whole thing of if you remember, like the midwives, like Pharaoh's trying to like kill off the children. So he tells the Hebrew midwives, there's like 2 of them who like serve the Hebrew population, and they said, if like when the baby's been born, when it's like halfway out, if it's a boy, like kill it or something. And the Hebrew midwives are like, yeah, sure, and then like don't do it, obviously. And then they basically, and Pharaoh's like, oh, why are these babies still being born? And they're like, oh, it's just like, yeah, the Hebrew women, they're just like so like kind of strong that like by the time we get the call and we've got to them, like they've already pushed the baby straight out. And you can imagine everyone's be like, yeah, right, like yeah, that's not how childbirth works. And it's just meant to be just really funny, just like these Hebrew midwives like having fun at Pharaoh's expense when he's like this pretty big cheese, like was basically had like a godlike status and power in the world. So anyway, there's bits of Exodus that are quite funny. I think this is kind of meant to be funny, even though it's sort of kind of sad. This is when they've come out, they've come out of Egypt, and Moses has gone up on the mountain, and I can't find it. Show them that sign there. Is it gone? I'm looking for the golden calf. If anyone knows what chapter of Exodus the golden calf is. It was like here on my page. 32, got it. Melissa pointed out once again that the challenge of making a TV show about breakfast is that by the time you finish a TV show, the egg has gone cold. But I obviously have my work so it's fine. Right, so the golden calf. And so it says, no, I forget how long Moses was on the mountain for like 40 days, which is like a little bit of time, perhaps longer than you might expect someone to be up on the mountain for. But anyway, it says, when the people saw that Moses delayed to come down from the mountain, the people gathered themselves together to Aaron and said to him, up, make us gods who shall go before us. As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him. And okay, it goes on, and they basically, he says like, give us all your gold earrings and stuff, which I think they'd taken out of Egypt was part of the kind of plunder, the wealth that kind of God had promised, I think, beforehand. Where if you look back in Genesis somewhere, and then like the Egyptians had basically given them all this, like their rings and jewelry and stuff, said like, just go, like take this with you. So anyway, they like melt this all down and make a golden calf. Now the funny thing is, and I'm trying to find it, is that Aaron comes down and is like, what have you done? So Moses comes down, it's like yeah, it's so funny. So Moses has come back and he's like unimpressed by the calf, obviously, And Moses said to Aaron, "What did this people do to you that you have brought such a great sin upon them?" And Aaron said, "Let not the anger of my Lord burn hot. You know the people, that they are set on evil. For they said to me, 'Make us gods who shall go before us.' As for this Moses, the man who brought us out of the land of Egypt, we do not know what has become of him." So I said to them, "Let any who have gold take it off." So they gave it to me, and I threw it into the fire, and out came this calf. So Aaron's basically like, yeah, it's just so funny. Like Aaron's like, I threw this gold into the fire, and this cow came out, and it's like, what are you chatting, Aaron? Like, it's like it doesn't just happen like that. It's a bit like it's kind of a bit like when Adam tries to blame God for Eve misleading him with the apple, when it's like he says like, "Oh, that woman that you put here with me, she did it. Like, it's your fault." And Aaron's just like, "Oh, I just put all this gold in the fire, and like this like cow came out, like," and that's not how it happened, obviously. And it talks about earlier on, and you see the gold for their hand and fashioned it with a graving tool and made a golden calf. Like Aaron quite clearly like carved this cow, won't carve it, or like cast it, or whatever, however made it. And it's just like, oh no, I don't know what happened. Like it just came out of the fire. So it's just ridiculous. And I think, and obviously Moses isn't going to be fooled by this. He knows like clearly someone has been behind this, and that's kind of not quite the point of the story. But I think it's we just see this whole episode with the Israelites in coming out of Egypt, where they've been set free from slavery, and we just see how like fickle and pathetic they are. With they're like in the desert. It's like they've got across the Red Sea, and I think it's based in the next chapter. They're just like, we wish we were back in Egypt. It was better there. At least we had food to eat or something. And I can't remember if it's like before the manna started, or whether it's with the manna. They're just like, "Oh, this manna's really useless. So it was much better. We had much less of food in Egypt." And it's like, you were enslaved. Like, what are you talking about? And you just read it and just like, this is so pathetic and like silly. And yeah, this episode with the golden calf, where it's again like Aaron, the way Aaron talks about it, I'm sure we all have experiences like that where we've done something wrong. We know we've done something wrong. We're trying to make it or describe it in the way that casts us in the best light possible, or that or children when they've broken something and they're just like, "Oh, it broke," and it's like, well, yeah, you broke it because you were like pulling it exactly how I told you not to, or whatever it is, or we just read it and we're like, who are these people? It's ridiculous. But then also, I think we realise, if you think a tiny bit further, you're like, this is just exactly what we're like. And the whole kind of metaphor, no, metaphor's a word because it's not, it's a kind of, it's more than a metaphor because it's in there as a kind of like pattern. And you see this referred back to loads later, is the kind of God freeing his people from slavery in Egypt, and the kind of way that reflects it is a type of and a metaphor of a picture of how God sets us free from the bondage of slavery to sin and lead us into like a new life, and just kind of see so many parallels with the way that the Israelites think about slavery and how we find ourselves thinking about sin, and that we forget how bad sin is, both as like how it offends God, but also just the way it can like mess up our lives and just is not good for us and is not kind of fun, and we forget so quickly we're so quickly drawn back, and we think like God's a spoilsport and life would be better if we could just do what we wanted and like do all this sin and like and yeah, we just forget and say stupid things like we want to go back to how our life was before. Wouldn't really be better if I just like never met Jesus and was just free to live how I wanted. Like back then things were better. Well, clearly slavery in Egypt is not better than being free, being led by God through the wilderness to the promised land. Just like going back to sin in our old lives is not better than like life lived with Jesus. And so yeah, I think it's just a really helpful reminder. And the one other thing, it's like 40 minutes, and my egg is going cold, and the coffee isn't done. But one other thing that came out of this lecture series that this guy was doing, it turned out he'd been a consultant on the film Prince of Egypt, and I think he went into like some meeting with like the high level producer or the executives from the studio or whatever, and I think they showed in the film or like talking through the outline, and kind of said like what do you think or something like this, and basically he said, oh no, I think he asked them like, what do you think Exodus is about? And they're like, oh, it's about freedom and like being set free, and like they're free from Egypt, and like that's the kind of whole thing. And he kind of made the point, it's like, well, actually the story isn't just they're being set free, they're freed from Egypt to something, like you're set free to something. It's not just a kind of abstract freedom, but it's a to something. And so I think he said it's quite late in the day in the movie, and they're like, oh well, we've kind of sort of finished now. But if you remember the film, there's like this extra scene at the end, which is basically sort of from behind Moses, I think, as he sort of comes over the brow of a hill and can see down into the valley where the people are worshipping the golden calf, in fact, and he's got the Ten Commandments. There's just this kind of little bit at the end that basically sort of hand waves in the direction of like the rest of the story to come. And this guy was saying basically that was their kind of concession to this idea of like being set free to something, was like they're like, oh, we'll just shove this bit at the end to like kind of fit. But I think that's again a reminder to us that we're not just set free from sin, and it probably depends what you're like and maybe what stage or season you are in your Christian walk. And I think especially early on, we can be very focused on like fighting sin, and like kind of we're sort of looking back in some ways, and like that's really important to do, and to put sin to death in our lives. But we're also, and I think I find myself now, I've sort of been a Christian for like nearly 10 years now, and I think I do find this is what I think about more now, which is maybe reassuring. Is like thinking about not just like what am I not trying to do, like I'm not trying to do this and this and like, but like what am I called into, and I suppose both in the sense there's positive things you do, like I'm not trying to sin, whatever that is, that your thing that you're battling, but I'm trying to like read my Bible every day. But even on a like a kind of bigger sense, like what I guess I don't want to say like what's your promised land, because that's incredibly like trite, but God calls us from stuff to stuff. Like I think it says in Ephesians, God, for we are God's people, God's handiwork, created in I forget. It's Ephesians 2:10. Created something about advance for I completely garbled it. Created advance for good works for us to do. So, like basically talks about God's like rescued us to do stuff that's prepared for us. And so I guess my final thought before I waffle myself into oblivion is let's not just be looking to fight sin in our lives, and to an extent that we end up focusing on that kind of dangerously, but what is the kind of freedom that God's called you to walk in, and what does that look like? What are the ways you're not living in the promised land? What are the ways that you're kind of still looking over your shoulder back to Egypt, wondering whether life was really actually better there, which it definitely wasn't, by the way. So yeah, that's some collected thoughts on Exodus, or not so collected, but there we go. And has now been an incredible 43 minutes, so I will plunge the coffee and then I will say goodbye for this week. There we go. So, sunshine egg, coffee, Ruby breakfast juice, and a little bit of Exodus. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next week.